My God almighty, he is broken in half. Tyson and Austin. Tyson and Austin.
Puppies. We get it, the Attitude Era was the greatest period in wrestling history. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, The Undertaker and Mick Foley in their prime under the same roof. It's the sort of lineup that we can all agree featured the greatest main event scene in wrestling history and some of the wackiest stories. Whether it be classic moments like Austin's beer bath, the Montreal Screwjob and Foley's Hell in a Cell crash, or the sexist moments and sometimes even racially insensitive undercard stories, Raw is War featured the sort of non-stop action and controversy approach that the company has tried to replicate in the near 2 decades since. Comparatively, the current WWE roster could be argued as having the deepest pool of talent the company has ever seen, with a higher potential for top quality matches than at any point in history, only with less potential for the same degree of controversy and a, some would argue, criminally low amount of dick jokes. So what would happen if some of the current crop were able to express themselves in the same way as those in the Attitude Era did? Which wrestlers would flourish opposite the likes of Steve Austin in the main event, Billy Gunn and Road Dogg in the tag division, or Steve Blackman in the mid-card? I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic.com, and these are 10 current WWE wrestlers who would have been perfect for the Attitude Era. Join us! Number 10, Dean Ambrose. When first establishing the criteria for the perfect Attitude Era star, the most obvious characteristic you can look for in a contemporary talent is, well, attitude. And nobody personifies the same no F's given attitude of the Attitude Era better than Dean Ambrose. There's a reason he's been dubbed the modern era's Brian Pillman. In his current persona, the former Shield Brethren is a Grand Slam champion in his own right, but given his history as a hardcore wrestler by the name of Jon Moxley, there seems to be many more elements to this current-day superstar than may first meet the eye. Sure, his recent wacky Dean persona would likely be pushed way over the top in an Attitude Era setting, and his in-ring style would be made better by gimmicks, personality, and those oh-so-impressive facial expressions. Just imagine Ambrose and Foley in their prime. Truly worth salivating over. Number 9, Braun Strowman. Besides attitude, there is one thing that WWE had a lot of back in the Attitude Era, and that was big, sweaty men. It truly was the land of the giants, and there are no bigger, sweatier, or more gianter in the current era than Braun Strowman. This near 7-foot-tall behemoth is the sort of wrestler who could have made it in any era given his stature and athletic capabilities. But the former strongman competitor has also proven to have the comedic timing and believable badassery necessary to have existed at the peak of the Attitude Era. Can you imagine Braun Strowman coming face to face with Attitude Era Kane, squashing Kai and Tai, being a member of Ministry of Darkness? The possibilities are endless. And given how his on-screen antics have become more and more reminiscent of the Attitude Era over the course of his career, think smashing a double base over Elias, emerging from a garbage truck, yanking down some conveniently placed scaffolding, Strowman has already proven himself worthy of earning his spot in those forever beloved Attitude Era highlight reels. Number 8, EC3. Another vitally important aspect of the typical Attitude Era WWE wrestler was their body image. At the top of the card, the solid builds of Steve Austin, The Rock, and Triple H reigned supreme, while the impressive muscle definition on the likes of Ken Shamrock and Val Venus impressing lower down the card. While there was always space for the less bodybuilder image physiques of the Hardys, the Dudleys, Big Boss Man, and of course Rikishi, the outspoken rule at the time was to look and be larger than life. The type of man a man would want to be and a woman would want to be with. Nobody in current-day WWE personifies this unspoken rule better than the newly re-signed NXT star EC3. Not only is he attractive, well-tanned and well-oiled, but he most importantly has the build. Is there anyone in current-day WWE with more muscles popping out of more places than this man? He's somewhat of a poster boy for the era to look at, but his on-the-mic comedic sensibilities and smarmy 1%er persona would also prove to be an excellent foil for the rough-and-ready hard men of the time, making him a potential friend of the McMahons and an unmissable part of the action each and every Monday night. Number 7, Gallows and Anderson. When thinking back to the Attitude Era, it's tough to look beyond the tag division. Whether it was Edge and Christian, the Hardys, the New Age Outlaws, the Dudleys, or even the short-lived return of the Road Warriors, it seemed like there was always something interesting and potentially show-stealing on offer. Even Too Cool were brilliant, and they were a couple of guys dressed in baggy pants and sunglasses dancing to white people hip-hop. Looking at the current WWE roster, there are a few standout teams that spring to mind as great fits for such a division. The Usos, the Authors of Pain, the Bludgeon Brothers, even the New Day could all provide exciting matches with any number of Attitude Era teams. but none of them would reap the out-of-ring benefits of more adult content and the ability to provide off-the-cuff moments of inspiration than Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. The two former Bullet Club members have proven inside and out of WWE that their comedic timing and ability to cut a believable, realistic promo is second to none. And this is only reinforced when they're given the opportunity to run with more adult content. See Gallows' Sex Ferguson persona on The Independents, changed to Tex Ferguson on WWE Southpaw Regional Wrestling, for a prime example. Importantly for the era, the team is also made up of two pretty big dudes, making a tag team feud with any number of teams, including the likes of the Brothers of Destruction, a believable route for them to take. A fact that only reinforces how perfect they would have been for the Attitude Era. Number 6. Lana. If there was one element of the Attitude Era that has undeniably been improved in the years following, it's the women's division. We've come a long way from the bra and panties matches between Sable and Jacqueline, the public stripteases, and the man-on-woman violence. Happily, the WWE have also moved beyond their preferred look of big-breasted blonde bombshells and into a realm more representative of women of all body types. But if there was one current WWE women's wrestler who could have fit into the mold of the Attitude Era's greatest women's wrestlers, it would be Lana. The supremely attractive Mrs. Rusev would not only have the blonde bombshell thing going for her, but she'd also have the gimmick. In an era where foreign heels were often Canadian, a pro-Russia gimmick in the women's division could have done wonders in regard to getting Lana over as a top female character on WWE programming, and would have likely resulted in a prominent managerial role or a run or two with the women's gold. It would have been money. Number 5. Chad Gable. Thinking back to the later years of the Attitude Era brings memories of a solid mid-card of hard-working, incredibly talented grapplers like Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, Dean Malenko, and Eddie Guerrero, and if there was to be one contemporary WWE talent that would be able to mix it in the ring with the same technical prowess, it would be Chad Gable. Gable has molded himself after technical wrestling legend Kurt Angle, adapting his comparatively as legitimate competitive background to a grappler's style in the squared circle, creating a somewhat timeless aura to his offense that would be well suited to matches with any of the Attitude Era's greatest. While there are arguably better in-ring workers around in WWE at the moment, few possess the unique style and ability to pull it off as Chad Gable does, making him the ideal candidate for a workhorse role on an Attitude Era roster. Number 4. Big E. There are some wrestlers who come along at the right time and in the right place, and one such wrestler who would have been just those things during the Attitude Era is Big E. The New Day's powerhouse frontman would have fit the look of the day, has a sense of humor that would have felt at home during the era, and has proven throughout his time with the New Day that he isn't afraid to tackle sexual innuendo from time to time. A key aspect of any Attitude Era mid-carder, I'm sure you'll agree. He would have, of course, been a great fit for the Nation of Domination, given his tag team credentials, and how almost every black WWE star of the time was associated with the group, but it's his in-ring work which doesn't rely on just his frightening strength, but goes above and beyond that into something altogether more entertaining. The former Big E Langston could have become a real player in an Attitude Era roster, enhancing the slower, methodical matches of those with super strength into faster and more entertaining matchups that would have separated him from the rest and made him into a memorable Attitude Era star. Number 3. Fandango. If there's a current WWE wrestler who could benefit the most from a more adult-orientated product, it would be Fandango. As one half of the Fashion Police, Fandango has been packaged in a family-friendly manner unbecoming of his more adult sense of humor and terrific comedic timing, though glimmers of his more edgy side do remain. The man with the dancer gimmick wouldn't need to change much, just go all in with his slightly creepy, live-the-gimmick persona and really push home those circular thrusts. He wouldn't ever be a main event player, but he'd be a good foil for the likes of The Godfather, and may have even been the sort of character considered as a potential member of Right to Censor, and who doesn't want to see that? Number 2. Elias. The Attitude Era was all about celebrating personas as close to the real person behind them as has ever been the case in the history of wrestling, but that doesn't mean there wasn't room for gimmicks. Most wrestlers had their personas born out of such gimmicks, and many others created gimmicks out of such personas, but just as the case is now, there was always room for a musician, especially one with the self-worshipping delusion and cheap heat capabilities of this generation's Elias. Who wants to walk with him? Of course, some small elements to the character would have to be altered to fit in with the times. For example, Walk with Elias wouldn't quite work in an era branded as WWF and not WWE, while his hipster-inspired get-up would not quite hit home in the same way as it does in the contemporary landscape. His grunge-inspired look and style of song would, however, be just as provocative, if not more so to a WWE fan of the time. And if ever there was a stereotypical audience to draw legitimate hatred out of through hometown insults, it was was the incredibly vocal Attitude Era crowds. In the ring, Elias could cover for his lack of speed by instead focusing on drawing heat, and he could always cover up a loss by smashing someone over the head with his guitar. He'd be a solid fit for a hardcore match, especially with so many clamoring for his comeuppance, and if they ever did turn him babyface, they'd have a chart-topping music artist on their hands. It would be a win for WWE and a win for Elias. Number 1. John Cena. If you look at modern era WWE stars who can talk the talk, walk the walk, and look the look, then there are none more iconic than John Cena. The 16-time world champion could outtalk almost anyone, as proven in his 2-year-long program with The Rock, and his never-budging good guy persona would be one hell of a feather ruffler for someone as anti-everything as Stone Cold Steve Austin. Imagine the promos between Cena and Austin or Cena and McMahon. The way they could switch his wholesome persona into something to be hated by an audience begging for blood and controversy. It would be fantastic. Feuds with the Ministry, the McMahons, Austin, Triple H, Mick Foley, The Undertaker would be blockbuster events, and could you imagine this Cena as the leader of an undercard stable with Too Cool and Rikishi? It would be priceless. Cena is the sort of performer who has it all, and seeing him be able to mix it with the very best of the best on a regular occurrence is a simply mouth-watering prospect, making him our number 1 current WWE wrestler who would have been perfect for the Attitude Era. So that's our list. Let us know what you think in the comments below, and you can follow me on Twitter here. If you enjoy what we do at Cultaholic, you can pledge to our Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.